The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Thunder rolled like a growl from the heavens as 17-year-old Caleb pressed his boots deeper into the mud. His flashlight beam cut through the downpour, dancing across twisted branches and half-sunken fences. Somewhere out there, something had screamed. Not a person, but not quite an ordinary animal either. It had started with a frantic knock on the door. Old Mr. Weatherby, the retired rancher who lived down the hill, barely able to breathe, had said, "Something's out there, on the North Trail. Hurt. Screamin'. Might be a horse. Might be worse." Caleb hadn't waited. He grabbed his coat, ignored his mom's protests, and ran out into the storm. Every tree groaned in the wind, each gust soaking him more than the last. Then he froze. A sound like nothing he'd heard before. Deep, guttural. Broken. He turned sharply and saw it, a figure crumpled near the fence. A massive, dark silhouette lying twisted against the mud, shivering. It was a horse. Caleb stumbled forward, heart pounding. The animal was massive, yet so fragile in this moment. Soaked to the bone, its ribs pushed against its skin with every ragged breath. A tangle of barbed wire dug into its flank, and blood darkened the surrounding ground. The horse lifted its head weakly. Then those eyes. He stopped breathing. They weren't just panicked eyes. They were pleading. There was pain in them, yes, but something deeper, something desperate. A look that said, "Asterisk, please. Don't leave me, asterisk." Caleb's voice cracked. Hey, it's okay. I see you. I'm here." He dropped to his knees beside the animal, ignoring the rain and the freezing mud soaking into his jeans. Gently, he reached toward the tangled wire. The horse didn't flinch. It was like it knew, like it had waited for someone to come. Not just anyone, but him. Hands trembling, Caleb worked to untangle the barbed wire. It had coiled like a serpent into the poor creature's flesh, deep enough to draw long, slow trails of blood. Every tug made the horse grunt in agony, but it never moved away. It just watched him, trusted him. More thunder. He looked around. He was too far from the ranch. There was no cell signal out here. No way to call for help. And the horse couldn't walk, not like this. Caleb whispered, "What happened to you?" Lightning cracked above, lighting up the creature's battered body. Old scars. Faint brands. Caleb's breath caught. This horse had once been trained. Someone had owned it, maybe even loved it once. And now it lay abandoned in a field, dying in the storm. His eyes burned with tears. He blinked them away. "I'm not leaving you," he promised. "No matter what." He slipped off his jacket, draped it over the horse's shivering neck. It was pointless, maybe, but it was all he had. Caleb sat in the rain, hands still on the creature's side. He began to hum, a soft, low tune his mother used to sing to him when he was little. The wind howled around them, but the moment held. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then a noise, boots splashing in the mud. He looked up. Mr. Weatherby. The old man stared, wide-eyed. "Lord have mercy, that Thunderbolt?" Caleb blinked. "What?" "That's Thunderbolt," the man rasped, voice cracking. "Racing legend. Won everything 10 years ago. Then just vanished. No one knew what happened. Thought he'd been stolen or sold off." Caleb looked back at the horse, Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt looked into his eyes again. That same trust. That same unspoken bond. Mr. Weatherby stepped forward. "We can't move him tonight. Too risky." Caleb nodded, never breaking eye contact with the horse. "Then I'll stay. In this storm." He stayed here, waiting. Someone has to stay with him. Mr. Weatherby hesitated, then handed Caleb a thermos. "Hot cocoa. Brought it in case. You're a brave kid." The man turned back toward the road to fetch help, his lantern slowly disappearing into the darkness. Caleb leaned closer to Thunderbolt, fingers brushing gently over his soaked mane. The horse let out a low, aching breath and closed his eyes. "I'm right here," Caleb whispered, "and I'm not going anywhere." The storm raged on. But for now, under the fury of the night sky, man and beast held onto each other, and neither was alone anymore. By morning, the storm had passed, but the world it left behind was soaked, quiet, and gray. A pale sun struggled to push through the mist, and the fields around Caleb shimmered with puddles and broken branches. His back ached. His fingers were numb. But he hadn't slept, and he hadn't left Thunderbolt's side. The great horse lay still but alive. His breathing was shallow, steady, and slower now. Caleb had barely moved, afraid that any shift would break the fragile thread keeping Thunderbolt tethered to life. Then, a crunch of tires over gravel. A truck door slammed. Caleb turned. A woman in her late 40s jogged toward him, bundled in a ranch coat, her red hair tucked into a wool cap. Behind her, two more men rolled out a small animal stretcher from the truck's trailer. "You the one who stayed with him?" she asked, crouching by Caleb without waiting for an answer. He nodded. "His name's Thunderbolt." She paused. "You sure?" "That's what Mr. Weatherby said." He recognized him. Her eyes softened. "I'm Dr. Rowan. I'm a large animal vet. Let's take a look." For the next few minutes, Caleb sat back as Dr. Rowan and her team examined the horse. She spoke softly, never startling Thunderbolt, and her hands were quick but gentle. "Deep lacerations," she murmured. "Malnutrition. Shock. But he's a fighter." Caleb's throat tightened. One of the men returned with a sling harness. They worked slowly, carefully sliding it beneath Thunderbolt's belly while whispering reassurances. When they finally lifted him, mechanically, using a winch on the trailer, Caleb held his breath. Thunderbolt didn't struggle. He groaned faintly, but his eyes searched the field. Then he saw Caleb. And again, that look. "You coming?" Dr. Rowan asked, noticing the way the horse focused on the boy. Caleb hesitated. I don't know if I should." "He trusts you. That counts for more than you realize." Caleb climbed into the truck's back seat. He watched as Thunderbolt was gently placed into the padded trailer. Dr. Rowan sat beside him in the cab. "You know," she said quietly, as the truck bounced along the muddy road, "not many kids would have stayed in a storm like that. I couldn't leave him. He looked at me like he knew me, like I was supposed to be there." She smiled softly. "Sometimes animals just know. And sometimes we're the ones they've been waiting for." At the vet clinic, Thunderbolt was carefully moved into a heated stable stall. Caleb helped carry supplies, held flashlights, and even brushed Thunderbolt's mane as the vet stitched his wounds. He never once left the stall. 2 days passed. Caleb didn't go home. His mother came once to check on him, tears in her eyes, but didn't make him leave. "I don't understand," she said, "but I can see it matters." Thunderbolt improved slowly. The bleeding stopped. He drank water, nibbled hay, even neighed faintly when Caleb entered the barn. Each time their eyes met, it felt like the world outside the stall disappeared. Dr. Rowan watched closely. One evening, she leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "You said Mr. Weatherby called him Thunderbolt, right?" Caleb nodded. "Well, I reached out to some old racing registries. Turns out, Thunderbolt was indeed reported missing 10 years ago. But there's more. He belonged to a man named George Linton, top breeder, retired after Thunderbolt vanished." "Do they want him back?" Caleb asked cautiously. Dr. Rowan hesitated. "George Linton passed away 3 years ago. No known relatives." "Which means?" Caleb blinked. "He doesn't belong to anyone." She shook her head. "Not anymore. Legally, he's unclaimed. And in cases like this, the animal's future can be decided by the rescuer." Caleb's eyes widened. "You mean me? If you want him, we'll have paperwork to fill out, but yes." The boy turned to the stall. Thunderbolt stood, still weak but proud. His gaze found Caleb's instantly. That bond hadn't faded. It had only grown stronger. "I don't know how to take care of a horse," Caleb whispered. "You already are," Dr. Rowan replied. "The rest you can learn." Caleb reached a hand through the bars. Thunderbolt pressed his nose gently against his palm. The moment was silent, sacred. But just as hope bloomed, Thunderbolt's leg buckled. Caleb lunged. "No, no, no, no." The great horse groaned and collapsed to the straw-covered floor, eyes fluttering, breath uneven. "Dr. Rowan." She rushed in. "Get me the adrenaline. Now." Chaos erupted. A nurse dashed into the room. Machines beeped. Caleb was pulled back as Dr. Rowan knelt beside the horse, voice rising. Thunderbolt's eyes searched the stall, searching for one thing only. "Caleb." And he whispered through the noise, "Don't go. Please don't go." Thunderbolt's body trembled. His breaths came in shallow gasps, each weaker than the last. Caleb stood frozen at the edge of the stall, hands clenched into fists, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear anything else. The world narrowed to the sight of the horse, his horse, fighting to breathe. "Stay with me," Caleb whispered again, voice shaking. "You're not done yet. You can't be." Dr. Rowan worked fast, pushing the needle into Thunderbolt's neck and massaging the area. Her brow was furrowed tight, lips pressed in a firm line. The nurse looked on helplessly. "Pulse is fading." "No," Caleb said. "No, it's not." Dr. Rowan didn't respond. She kept working, kept hoping, kept believing. Or maybe she just couldn't give up while Caleb's eyes begged her not to. For what felt like hours, but was barely a minute, the stall held its breath. Then a twitch. Thunderbolt's ear flicked. Caleb stepped forward, breath caught in his chest. The great horse blinked. Dr. Rowan looked up slowly, stunned. He's stabilizing. Thunderbolt groaned and shifted slightly, lifting his head just an inch off the straw. His eyes found Caleb's, tired and glazed, but still there. Still fighting. Caleb dropped to his knees and reached through the bars again. You scared me, big guy. Thunderbolt closed his eyes, but not in surrender. It was rest. Real needed rest. Dr. Rowan stood and exhaled. I've seen miracles in this barn. But this, she looked at Caleb. He didn't come back for me. He came back for you. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Thunderbolt's recovery was slow, filled with setbacks. Some days he barely moved. Some nights Caleb stayed up in the barn, dozing against the stall, whispering stories to keep the silence away. But every day, the bond between them grew stronger. Caleb learned how to clean wounds, wrap bandages, mix feed with supplements. Dr. Rowan taught him how to read body language, how a flick of the ear or a shift in weight could mean everything. And Thunderbolt, once broken and battered, began to rise. Literally. It happened early one morning. Caleb was mucking the stall, humming to himself, when he heard the shuffling of hooves behind him. He turned and froze. Thunderbolt was standing, not just lifting himself for a few seconds. He was fully upright, shaky but proud, his mane falling to one side, his chest wide like a warhorse reborn. Caleb dropped the pitchfork and ran to his side, wrapping his arms around the creature's neck. Thunderbolt leaned into him, breathing slow and deep. Tears ran down Caleb's cheeks. You did it, he whispered. You came back. From that day on, Thunderbolt never fell again. 1 month later, the sun was out in full for the first time since the storm. Birds chirped, and the hills beyond the ranch glowed gold in the afternoon light. Dr. Rowan opened the barn gate. You sure about this? Caleb adjusted the lead rope in his hands. He's ready. Thunderbolt took a slow step forward, his hooves crunching softly on gravel. Every eye at the ranch watched in quiet awe as the once-lost legend walked out into the field again. Children from nearby farms lined the fences. Some brought flowers. Some just watched, wide-eyed. Caleb, one of them whispered. Is that really Thunderbolt? Caleb smiled. Yeah, he's ours now. He led Thunderbolt into the center of the field, unclipped the rope, and stepped back. For a second, the horse didn't move. Then he galloped. Not with full speed. Not like the racer he once was, but with a power that turned heads and stole breaths. His mane flew. His hooves struck the earth like thunder. He circled, then slowed, and came back to Caleb's side on his own. The crowd clapped. Some wept. Caleb simply reached up and ran his fingers through the mane of the horse that had once been moments from death. That night, as the barn lights dimmed and the ranch fell quiet, Caleb sat beside Thunderbolt's stall, writing in his old sketchbook. Not just doodles now, stories. Their story. He looked up as Thunderbolt let out a soft breath, his large eyes half closed in peace. You waited out there, Caleb whispered. All that time. In the cold. In the dark. Waiting for someone to see you. He reached out and touched the horse's nose gently. But you didn't just survive. You brought me back too. Gave me something I didn't know I needed. The barn was quiet, save for the rustle of hay and the steady, calm breaths of Thunderbolt. I didn't rescue you, Caleb whispered. We rescued each other. And with that, man and horse settled into a silence deeper than words, stronger than fear, and more powerful than any storm. A silence that spoke of second chances, of unbreakable bonds. And the kind of love that finds you when you need it most.